Welcome to the Weekly Dose, a Pharmacy Times broadcast bringing you the latest clinical updates, regulatory decisions, and expert insights shaping the pharmacy profession. I'm Danielle Valetti, and today I'm joined by Kennedy Ferrugia.
Each week, we break down the top stories impacting pharmacists, from emerging therapies and policy shifts to real-world challenges in patient care.
Let's get started with this week's top story. A new executive order signed by President Trump is aimed at accelerating the development of psychedelic-based therapies for conditions like PTSD, depression, and substance use disorders. The order does not legalize these agents, but instead directs federal agencies, including the FDA, to streamline clinical trials, expand access pathways, and prioritize review for investigational therapies.
One of the most notable components is the potential use of expedited review programs, which could significantly shorten approval timelines for certain breakthrough therapies. The order also encourages greater federal coordination and increased funding for research, particularly in areas like veteran mental health and treatment-resistant conditions.
For pharmacists, this signals a potential shift in the future treatment landscape, but also comes with important considerations. These therapies remain investigational with no known risks, including cardiovascular effects, psychiatric instability, and drug interactions.
As research expands, pharmacists may play a larger role in clinical trials, patient education, and safety monitoring, particularly as these agents move closer to potential approval. Turning now to this week's KOL feature, global supply chain pressures and what they mean for drug availability. Pharmacy Times spoke with Michael Ganio, PharmD, about how geopolitical conflicts could impact the medication supply chain, particularly for genetic drugs sourced overseas.
Ganio explained that while immediate shortages may be limited, disruptions to manufacturing sites and global trade routes like the Strait of Hormuz could have delayed effects. These disruptions may increase costs and create downstream shortages, especially for older generic medications.
He noted that because these issues occur upstream, it's difficult to predict exactly what drugs will be affected. However, the reality is that the U.S. drug supply chain remains highly dependent on global sourcing, particularly from regions like India and China.
For pharmacists, preparation is key. Ganio emphasized the importance of having systems in place to manage shortages, including identifying alternatives, coordinating with prescribers, and helping patients navigate access challenges.
And in community settings, that also means being prepared for patient questions, even when answers are uncertain. Ultimately, the message is clear. Supply chain resilience and proactive planning will continue to be essential in pharmacy practice.
In regulatory news, the FDA has approved Teplizumab for children aged 2 to 11 with chronic spontaneous urticaria who remain symptomatic despite antihistamine therapy. This makes it the first biologic approved in the United States for this younger pediatric population with uncontrolled CSU.
The approval is based on data from the Liberty Cupid trial, which showed significant reductions in itch and hive activity, key drivers of disease burden. For pharmacists, this introduces a new option in a space where treatment has historically been limited.
Meanwhile, the FDA has also expanded approval of Teplizumab to include children as young as 1 year old to delay the onset of stage 3 type 1 diabetes. This marks the first disease-modifying therapy available for this very young population, targeting the autoimmune process before clinical disease develops.
Clinical data show the therapy can delay disease progression by a median of about 2 years, a potentially meaningful window for patients and families.
For pharmacists, both of these approvals highlight the expanding role of biologic and immune modulating therapies, particularly in pediatric care. This includes counseling caregivers, managing administration, and supporting long-term adherence and monitoring.
This week, Pharmacy Times was on site at the American Academy of Neurology annual meeting in Chicago, where several key clinical developments were presented.
Highlights included Phase 3 data showing that ecopipam reduced Tourette syndrome relapse risk by about 50%, as well as new data on cemdisiran, an mRNA-targeted therapy that improved symptoms in generalized myasthenia gravis. Researchers also explored expanding the role of cannabidiol in epilepsy, new targets for migraine treatment like PACAP, and the impact of hormonal and gender differences on neurological outcomes. Other studies highlighted the need for more personalized approaches, including differences in anti-seizure medication use and gaps in real-world treatment for conditions like NMOSD.
Looking ahead, the Community Oncology Alliance Conference will take place April 28th and 29th in Orlando, Florida.
COA is a national organization focused on supporting independent community oncology practices through policy, advocacy, and practice resources. This year, we'll be covering key discussions around policy, practice sustainability, and the evolving role of pharmacists in community-based cancer care.
Be sure to follow Pharmacy Times for the on-ground coverage, including interviews, insights, and key takeaways from the meeting. This week's stories highlight the rapid evolution of pharmacy practice, from emerging mental health therapies to ongoing supply chain challenges and new pediatric treatment options.
As always, pharmacists remain at the center of these developments, helping to interpret new data, navigate access challenges, and ensure safe, effective patient care. You can read more about all of these stories on pharmacytimes.com, and be sure to follow us on social media at @PharmacyTimes. For Pharmacy Times, I'm Danielle Valetti.
And I'm Kennedy Ferrugia. Thank you for watching the Weekly Dose. We'll see you next week.